Most aspiring writers will fail within their first year, and some won't even try. But why? We can all write, and we all have these amazing ideas rolling around our brains at all times. The problem is knowing how to get it out of our heads and onto the page. That I can help with. This is Refracted World. Writing is a skill, and like all skills, it can be taught, learned, and perfected over time. But that will only come with practice, patience, and persistence. Anyone can pick up a violin for the very first time and make a noise, but it will sound horrible. The same is true for writing. Everyone can write, but only those who hone their craft can write well. It is unlikely a novice will write a best-selling book, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. If writing really is the profession or even hobby you want to get into, all you need is the knowledge to know how. The first question you should ask yourself is, what kind of writer do you want to be? Personally, I have experience in many different areas, but not all at the same time. My writing credentials include over 100 scripts for TV, 3 plays, 2 published books, and a musical. I was also a journalist and magazine editor for a number of years, so I really do have a lot of experience, although most writers concentrate on one particular field. I'm afraid to tell you that there is no cheat code. You can watch all the YouTube videos, read all the books, and sign up for all the inspirational talks you want. None of them can magically transform you into a great writer. Sure, they can guide and educate, but ultimately the quality of what appears on the page is down to you. Let's play through a hypothetical. You're 25 and you really want to be a writer, but when watching this video, you learn it could be a good few years until you become a good writer. At this point, 99% of people simply won't try. They have better and more important things to do with their life. They'll come back to it in maybe a few years. But at 35, they still want to be a writer, but are still too busy. The same is true when they hit 45, and 55, and 65. This is why so many people don't start writing until after they retire, with many wishing they'd made the time earlier in their lives. So when is the best time to start writing? Now. Well, after this video. No matter how old you are, start writing today. Because if you leave it until tomorrow, you probably won't ever start. With that in mind, this video will aim to help you become a writer by giving you the advice and knowledge you need to get started. It's not an inspirational talk or checklist of ideas. This is just me talking to you and sharing my own history and how I became a writer. The first and most important thing you need to learn is something we've already touched on. The only way you will ever become a writer is by writing. I know that sounds redundant and far too simplistic, but it is the most important thing to remember. Every single day, write. On paper, on your computer, or even on your phone's notepad. Just write whatever you want in whatever genre you want. Fan fiction? Go for it. Fantasy, sci-fi, romance, just write. Perhaps you want to be a screenwriter, but you're stuck wondering how you go about getting your script seen. You're worrying about the wrong thing. Every screenwriter must first be able to convey a story. So, write that story. Even if you only spend 10 minutes a day writing, make sure you do it every single day. Because the more you write, the more experience and knowledge you will gain. No one else can do this for you. At the end of every month, read back what you've written and make any changes necessary. There will likely be plenty of them. And just keep doing that until you feel ready to take on a bigger project, like a poem, a book, or a play. The only way you will ever get good at something is by practice, and the more you practice, the better you will be. I taught myself how to touch type by using my keyboard to write every day, and I am not a patient person. I couldn't even tell you when it happened. One day I just realised I hadn't looked down on the keyboard in a while. The question I get asked the most is, how did I become a writer? Some people are genuinely interested, whereas others want me to divulge some ancient secret passed on through the ages that will fast-track them to best-selling author. Unfortunately, my answer is rarely the one they want to hear. I've always been a writer. For how it started, we need to go all the way back to 1984. The first film I remember seeing at the cinema was The Neverending Story. I had nightmares afterwards, with visions of the Gamork and Artex dying in the Swamp of Sadness. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch the film. 40 years later, and it's still my favourite. The next morning was the first time in my life I put crayon to paper and began to write. I would draw the characters from the film and pen what I could remember from the script. The things I couldn't, I would make up. I didn't know at the time, but I was writing my first ever fan fiction. From that point on, not a day went by when I wasn't writing something. Stories, plays, poems. I had no role models and I had no one supporting my creativity in my young life. And I was constantly bullied at school and at home. I was different, and that meant I was shunned by many of the people around me. Therefore, I spent a lot of time on my own. But I loved delving into the worlds I was able to create with my mind. When I was 11 years old, I wrote a sequel to the 1986 film Return to Oz. My teacher, Mrs. Hargreaves Carr, loved it. She was such a wonderful teacher and the very first person to support my creativity. She asked if I could turn my story into a play to stage for the whole school. So I did. I wrote, cast and directed it, and even played the narrator on performance day. It went really well, and afterwards, I received adoration from my peers, something that had never happened before. That was the first time I was asked how I was able to do it. How was my brain able to come up with and form a complex story and transfer it to the stage? The question baffled me. I'd never thought about it before. I just put pencil to paper and the story flowed. I couldn't explain it in any other way. To me, it just came naturally. I still have the original story. It's a little faded, but it's still all there in my little textbook. When I tell people now that I wrote and directed a play when I was 11 years old, it seems impossible. And yet at the time, it didn't feel strange at all. I wrote, directed and performed in another play when I was 13, and then at high school I excelled in English and performing arts, taking starring roles in all the school plays. I also wrote many plays and musical scores for my coursework. In my final year, a job was advertised looking for a school leaver to work for an independent TV and radio production company. I applied. I went through the extensive interview process and was offered a job. Now a choice. Do I go to college with the same people who had bullied me every single day of my life, or skip further education and work in television? It was a no-brainer. 1 week after my final exam, I had my first job as runner. It's basically the general dog's body who does whatever they are told to do. It's by far the worst job in TV, but if you can stick with it, you can learn a lot. And I did. I worked on set, in studio and on location. I travelled, stayed in 5-star hotels, worked with the biggest celebrities of the time and partied with the rich and famous. And I was only 16. At 17, already with many credits under my belt, I was asked to write the script for a light entertainment show. That became a weekly gig, and by the end of the year, while on location in London filming 2 shows at once, I was asked to take over the second show, as director. It went so well, I became the permanent writer and director. Again, this didn't seem strange for me at all. I knew what I was doing, I was good at it, and even though I was the youngest director in the country, it just felt like the natural progression. I only ever wrote TV scripts for factual entertainment though. I would have loved to write a TV drama, still would, Doctor Who especially, but my experience thus far is only in this one area. What made my scripts stand out was the fun I injected into them. Let's say you're filming at a manor house and you're there to interview the Lord and Lady, something we actually did. There are many ways you could write that script, and you have to know your audience. The average age of the show before I took over was 35 to 65, but I was 17, and I didn't want to make a show for what I thought were old people. I wanted to make a TV show I would enjoy watching. So that's what I did. The script was humorous, I tried to choose locations I wanted to visit, and when I couldn't, I would find the most appealing shots to film. Interviews were more personal and a little edgy, and when I got into the edit suite, instead of using the stock library music, I would bring a bag full of my own CDs and use the music I like to listen to. The viewing figures were around 600,000 when I took over, and within a few weeks, they went to 1.2 million. My youthful storytelling had doubled the viewership. My advice to you would be to never follow, always lead. There are millions of romance novels out there, all with very similar plot points, and yet, which is the one everyone knows about? 50 Shades of Grey. I've personally never read it or seen the film, but like most people, I know the synopsis, and I know how well it did. It was edgy and different, and dominated a market that was otherwise stale and awash with the same old same old. I briefly left the world of television to join a boy band, which went nowhere, but I was later offered a job in journalism. Again, this was a field I'd never worked in before, but I was confident enough with my writing to accept. Another piece of information. No one can do anything until they know how to do it. If you believe you have a skill set which can be applied to a different area, there is nothing stopping you trying. Sure, you could fail, but you also might not. Most people play life with so much caution, but why? I come from a working class background. I had no money, no savings, no collateral, and no one to fall back on. And yet that never stopped me chasing my dreams. We all get just one shot at life. So live it. The magazine had been set up by people I knew through my years of working in television, and that's how I was offered a job. So it's also not about what you know, but also who you know. They knew how I'd succeeded in TV so quickly, they knew I'd written scripts already, and when they'd set up a brand new magazine, they wanted me working for them, believing I had the skill set, even though I hadn't worked in journalism before. And so, whilst working for the magazine, I did what I had done in TV. I wrote in a way that would make me want to read the article. What did I want to know about? What did I enjoy seeing? Who would I like to read an interview about? After only 3 months, I was promoted to editor, and the following year headed another magazine for a different company. Journalism is fun, but nowhere near as much fun as TV. So I returned to the entertainment industry. I wrote and produced a number of shows over a number of years, while in the background continuing as a freelance journalist and online columnist. Then we hit my years as a professional actor. As I was on stage and screen and not writing, it's not pertinent to this video, so I'll skip past it. But if you would like to know the story, please let me know in the comments and I'll make a video about it in the future. Over the years, I have worked with many companies and websites and written a lot of articles, and I didn't get paid for any of them. So why did I do it? They all had a similar hook. We don't currently have a writing budget, but we should in the near future. Some people call it work experience, or a trial to see if you're a good fit for the company, but it's not that. Even with all my experience, I was working 10, 20 plus hours a week for nothing. Sure, it was nice to see my articles online, but I wasn't being compensated for my work. I love writing. To me, it's not just a job, it's what I do for fun. But that shouldn't mean I don't get paid. My time is worth something. My work is worth something. And after hundreds of articles written with no sign of ever being paid, I stopped giving away my work to people who didn't value it or me. I've never followed money, and I've never cared about money. Of course, it would be lovely to be rich and live in a grand home, but not if that means spending the bulk of my life working in a job I absolutely hate. I have a natural talent for talking, or the gift of the gab, as us English call it. Therefore, I would shine in sales. I know that. But no part of me has ever wanted to do sales. And if I forced myself to do it for the promise of wealth, I would be wasting my talents and the bulk of my life on a high-stress profession that would leave me with a big house I rarely see and a retirement that likely wouldn't last very long. Time is the most precious resource we have. It's not money. In 2017, I was older, wiser, and had a wealth of experience and credits. I should have been riding high, and yet I was capitalizing on none of it. A tragic event some years prior had completely stalled my life, and my creativity was gone. I wasn't working, I wasn't writing, I was barely surviving. But whenever you hit rock bottom, there's only one place you can go. Through the support of my future husband, I was able to pick myself back up and restart my life. No matter who you are, at some point you may be struck with something that knocks your confidence and derails your life. There is no time limit to how long this will last, but never let it consume you. No matter how dark life gets, there is always light. We can't see the future. We don't know what or who will come into our lives and help us regain ourselves, but never give up hope that they will. Creative people seem to suffer from depression a lot more than others, and I know this all too well. For many years, I let the depression control me. I lost years to the darkness, thinking there was no way forward, and yet here I am, stronger than I've ever been. Never give up on yourself. And once I was out of that hole, and my brain was once again sparking with a million ideas, I knew what I had to do. I was going to write and direct a musical for the London stage. I had no experience doing any of this. I had no friends in the field who could help me, and I had no idea where I was going to find the money to fund it. But I didn't just think I could do it, I knew I was going to do it. And I did. As there's still so much yet to talk about, and this video is getting quite long, in the next video I'll talk about how I wrote the musical, how I wrote my one-man play, and of course, how I wrote my 2 books. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the episode. I hope what you've heard so far has been useful. Here are the key points to remember. Start writing today and never give up. Have confidence in yourself to do and experience everything. You get one shot at life, so live it the way you want. Never give up hope, and don't work unpaid for anyone other than yourself, unless you really want to. I guess it was kind of inspirational. If you want to check out my books, they are both available on Amazon in paperback, hardback, and on Kindle. I've just released the 2nd edition of Refraction, so you should definitely check that out. The link is in the bio. And if you want to watch my play before I talk about the process of writing it, the whole show is on my YouTube page. The live filming is from London this time last year. It's called Blink. One last thing before you go. I'm still in the early stages of building up my YouTube channel, so if you enjoyed this video, please like it, comment, and share. All of this will help me grow and keep me creating content for the future. Thank you.